Single-shot firearms are firearms that hold only a single round of ammunition, and must be reloaded after each shot. The history of firearms began with single-shot designs, and many centuries passed before multi-shot repeater designs became commonplace. Single-shot designs are less complex than revolvers or magazine-fed firearms, and many single-shot designs are still produced by many manufacturers, in both cartridge and non-cartridge varieties, from zip guns to the highest quality shooting match weapons. History. Pre-cartridge era. The vast majority of firearms before the introduction of metallic cartridges in the 1860s were single-shot and muzzle loading. However, multi-barrel, breech loading, revolving, and other multi-shot firearms had been experimented with for centuries. Notable pre-cartridge era single-shot firearms included matchlock, wheelocks, snaplock, doglock, meeklet locks, flintlock, and percussion cap firearms. Muzzle loaders included Brown Bess muskets, Charleville muskets, Kentucky rifles, dueling pistols, M1841 Mississippi rifle, Springfield Model 1861 and many others. There were also breech-loading pre-cartridge era single shots such as Hall rifles, Fergus Zion rifles, Sharps rifles, and several others. Cartridge era. Rifles. Almost all of the early cartridge-fed rifles were single-shot designs, taking advantage of the strength and simplicity of single-shot actions. A good example is the trapdoor or Allen action used in early cartridge conversions of 1863 Springfield muzzle-loading rifles. The conversion consisted of filing out, or later milling out, the rear of the barrel, and attaching a folding bolt, the trapdoor, that flipped up and forwards to allow the cartridge to be loaded in the breech. Once loaded, the bolt was closed and latched in place, holding the round securely in place. The bolt contained a firing pin that used the existing percussion hammer, so no changes were required to the lock. After firing, the act of opening the bolt would partially extract the fired case from the chamber, allowing it to be removed. In 1866, the United States standardized on the .50 to 70 cartridge, chambered in trapdoor conversions of rifled muskets that had been used in the American Civil War. The trapdoor mechanism continued with the adoption of the Springfield 1873 rifle, chambered in the new .45 to 70 cartridge. The Springfield stayed in service until 1893, when it was replaced by the Krag-Jørgensen bolt-action rifle. Another muzzleloader conversion similar in concept to the Allen action was the British Snyder Enfield, also introduced in 1866, which hinged to the side rather than forward. Unlike the U.S. Army, which kept its trapdoors for decades, the British soon moved beyond the Snyder to the more sophisticated dropping block Martini action derived from the Peabody action. Martini Henrys were the standard British rifles of the late Victorian era, and Martini Enfield conversions continued in second-line service until the Second World War. Single-shot rifles were the preferred tools of big game hunters in the later 19th century. The buffalo hunters of the American West used Sharps, Remington, and Springfield single shots. Ivory and trophy hunters in Africa and Asia used Martini and break-action express rifles and elephant guns. These rifles were designed for very large black powder cartridges, from military issue .45 to 70 on up to the enormous .50 to 140 Sharps and .500 Express. Early repeating actions were not capable of handling rounds of this power and physical size. The single-shot big game rifle would only be displaced by bolt-action repeaters firing high-velocity smokeless powder cartridges in the early 20th century. After the advent of high-powered repeating rifles, single-shot rifles were primarily used for target shooting matches, with the first official match shooting event, opening at Creedmoor, Long Island in 1872. From about 1872 until the U.S. entry into World War I, 1917, target shooting with single-shot rifles was nearly as popular in America as golf is today. During that golden age of match shooting, the most popular target rifles were made by Bullard, Stevens, Remington, Maynard, Ballard, Faro, and Winchester. Calibers used by some of these rifles during matches ranged from the .25/20, .32/40, .33, .35, .35 to 55, .38 to 55, .40 to 50, .40/70, and a host of .44s, .44/105, .44/77, etc., for over 600-yard shooting at Creedmoor. But two calibers maintained consistency throughout their tenure during the single-shot era, the .32 to 40 and the .38 to 55 calibers. The minimum standard in the beginning of the sport had been 200-yard firing from the standing position, offhand position. No rifle scopes, no bench rests, no prone, lying down on the front, positions, but shooting, as famed rifle barrel maker, Harry Melville Pope, 1861–1950, once stated, standing on his hind legs and shooting like a man. The .32 to 40 and .38 to 55 were able to buck the wind better at 200 yards, and not wear the rifleman out by heavy recoil, all while sustaining great accuracy. In the end though, it was the .32 to 40 single-shot rifle that became the dean of match shooters, as the recoil from the .38 to 55 took its toll after hundreds of rounds had been fired during a match. In 1878, John Moses Browning patented arguably the greatest single-shot rifle ever produced. After Browning sold his design to the Winchester Repeating Arms Company, it was brought out as the Winchester Model 1885 rifle. Although fewer than 200,000 Model 1885 single shots were built, it remained in production from 1885 to 1920. Remington, Sharps, and Browning all made single-shot rifles using different actions, such as the rolling block and falling block. These rifles were originally chambered in large black powder cartridges, such as .50 to 110, and were used for hunting large game, often bison. Later production rifles would be in popular smokeless powder cartridges, such as the .30 to 40 Krag. Single-shot rifles coexisted for some time with the lever-action rifle, but they began to fade out of manufacture with the advent of reliable bolt-action rifles. Pistols. The handgun began as a single-shot weapon in China in the 14th century. In its many versions it remained a muzzle-loaded weapon until the advent of the metallic cartridge in the first third of the 18th century. Such single-shot cartridge-firing pistols were short-lived, as revolver technology evolved rapidly, and cartridge conversions existed for the common models of cap and ball revolvers. Two forms of single-shot pistol, however, remained: single-shot derringers, and target pistols, which were essentially single-shot rifle actions cut down to pistol size. The Remington rolling block is perhaps the most well-known of these. As the era of single-shot rifles faded, so did these early single-shot pistols. In 1907, J. Stevens Arms, a maker of inexpensive break-open single-shot rifles in pistol calibers, started making pistol versions of their rifles. This pistol was chambered in .22 long rifle and came with adjustable iron sights and grips designed for target shooting. These models were discontinued in 1939. Shotguns. Single-barrel shotguns have always been popular as an inexpensive alternative to double-barreled shotguns. They are almost always break-open designs, like the double-barreled designs, but far less expensive since they do not require the precise aligning of parallel barrels. Single-barrel shotguns are also lighter, which can be an advantage if they are carried hunting, though it does mean they have more felt recoil. They are not widely used in shotgun sports, as most events require the ability to quickly fire two successive shots. The single-barrel shotgun is often referred to as a kitchen door gun or a farm gun due to its low cost as a self-defense weapon. Types of single-shot cartridge actions. Trapdoor actions. The earliest metallic cartridge breech loaders designed for general military issue began as conversions of muzzle-loading rifle muskets. The upper rear portion of the barrel was filed or milled away and replaced by a hinged breech block which opened upward to permit loading. An internal angled firing pin allowed the reuse of the rifle's existing side hammer. The Allen action made by Springfield Arsenal in the U.S. hinged forward, the Snyder-Enfield used by the British opened to the side. Whereas the British quickly replaced the Snyder with a dropping block Peabody-style Martini action, the U.S. Army felt the trapdoor action to be adequate and followed its muzzle-loader conversions with the new production Springfield Model 1873, which was the principal longarm of the Indian Wars and was still in service with some units in the Spanish-American War. Other trapdoor actions include the rare Confederate Tarpley carbine, the Austrian Wanslow, the Belgian Albini Brandlin rifle and Tersen conversion, some of which were made from French 1777 pattern flintlocks, the M1842/59/67 Swiss Milbank Amsler, the M1859/67 Spanish Burden, and the Colt-manufactured Russian Burden Type I. All of these designs save the 1863 Tarpley date from the period 1865-1869, and all but the Tarpley and the Russian Burden were conversions from muzzle loaders. Break actions. Perhaps the most common type of single-shot action, usually found in shotguns, small pistols, and black powder elephant guns, a break action connects the barrel assembly to the breech block with a hinge. When a locking latch is released, the barrel assembly pivots away from the receiver, opening the breech and sometimes on higher quality firearms, partially extracting the spent cartridge. Rolling block actions. In a rolling block action, the breech block takes the form of a part cylinder, with a pivot pin through its axis. The operator rotates or rolls the block to open and close the breech. It is a simple, rugged, and reliable design. Rolling blocks are most often associated with firearms made by Remington in the later 19th century. In the Remington action, the hammer serves to lock the breech closed at the moment of firing, and the block in turn prevents the hammer from falling with the breech open. An interesting variation of the rolling block was the Austrian M1867 Wurndl Holub, in which the pivot pin was parallel to the barrel and the block rotated sideways. Dropping block actions. These are actions wherein the breech block lowers or drops into the receiver to open the breech, usually actuated by an under lever. There are two principal types of dropping block, the tilting block and the falling or sliding block. Tilting block actions. In a tilting or pivoting block action, the breech block is hinged at the rear. When the lever is operated, the block tilts down and forward, exposing the chamber. The best-known pivoting block designs are the Peabody Martini, and Ballard actions. The original Peabody rifles, manufactured by the Providence Tool Company, used a manually cocked side hammer. Swiss gunsmith Friedrich Martini devised an action that resembled the Peabody but incorporated a hammerless striker cocked by the operating lever with the same motion that pivoted the block. The 1871 Martini Henry, which replaced the trapdoor Snyder-Enfield, was the standard British Army rifle of the later Victorian era, and the Martini was also a popular action for civilian rifles. Charles H. Ballard's self-cocking tilting block action was produced by the Marlin Firearms Company from 1875, and earned a superlative reputation among long-range Creedmoor target shooters. Surviving Marlin Ballards are today highly prized by collectors, especially those mounted in the elaborate Swiss-style Schutzen stocks of the day. Falling block actions. In a falling block action, the block does not pivot, but rather slides vertically in a slot milled into the receiver. Falling blocks are among the strongest small-arm actions ever produced, and are also used in heavy artillery. Well-known falling block designs include the Sharps rifles and carbines, the Browning/Winchester single-shot, the Farquharson rifle, and the modern Ruger No. 1. Bolt actions. Although bolt actions are usually associated with fixed or detachable box magazines, in fact the first general-issue military breech loader was a single-shot bolt action, the paper cartridge Prussian needle gun of 1841. France countered in 1866 with its superior Chassepot rifle, also a paper cartridge bolt action. The first metallic cartridge bolt actions in general military service were the Burden Type II introduced by Russia in 1870, the Mauser Model 1871, and a modified Chassepot, the Grass Rifle of 1874, all these were single shots. Today most top-level small-bore match rifles are single-shot bolt actions. Single-shot bolt actions in .22 caliber were also widely manufactured as inexpensive boys' guns in the earlier 20th century, and there have been a few single-shot bolt-action shotguns, usually in .410 bore. Other single-shot actions. The Ferguson rifle. British Major Patrick Ferguson designed his rifle, considered to be the first military breech loader, in the 1770s. A plug-shaped breech block was screw-threaded so that rotating the handle underneath would lower and raise it for loading with ball and powder. The flintlock action still required conventional priming. The Hall rifle, the United States' first breech-loading cavalry carbine. The Hall was introduced in 1819. The lever tipped the breech block, including the chamber, upwards and back, allowing it to be loaded with powder and ball without the inconvenience of loading and ramming from the muzzle. Originally flintlocks, Halls later were made as or converted to percussion locks. The Kammerlader, a crank-operated Norwegian firearm produced around the time of the Prussian needle gun. Originally used a paper cartridge. Later many were converted to rimfire. The Burnside carbine, invented by future General Ambrose Burnside in 1857, this percussion cap carbine became the third most common cavalry breech loader in the Civil War after the Sharps and Spencer. Essentially a modification of the Hall concept, the Burnside featured a unique conical cartridge with a crushable hollow front rim, designed to seal the breech on closing. The Rising Breech carbine, an unusual action produced by Bull Hartz, Hall & Co. for the Southern Confederacy. The rising breech's underlever caused the breech block, including the chamber, to slide vertically above the line of the barrel, the reverse of a falling block. The chamber was loaded from the front with a paper cartridge. The Morse carbine, its action is similar to the Hall rifle but the shape of its chamber is different. Winchester Model 55, an unconventional hybrid of a single shot and a semi-automatic. This .22 caliber rifle ejected the fired case and recocked itself like a conventional blowback-operated self-loader, but it lacked a magazine and had to be manually reloaded for each shot. Screw barrel actions. The OSS Stinger pen pistol and several other clandestine pen guns, as well as homemade zip guns often made using plumbing parts, and cane guns used for both defense and poaching, use a screw thread to attach the chambered barrel to a receiver with some sort of breech and firing pin. The user unscrews the barrel from the receiver to expose the chamber to load a cartridge. The RN50.50 BMG single-shot rifle uses a similar screw-thread breech cap to allow an otherwise simple break action to contain a .50 BMG round. Modern single shots. Although non-cartridge single-shot firearms are still made in hobbyist contexts, for example, replicas of antique guns, this discussion focuses on newer designs employing cartridges. Pistols. The modern era of single-shot firearms is most visible in the realm of pistols. Remington introduced the single-shot bolt-action XP100 pistol in 1963, which heralded the era of high-performance, high-velocity pistols. The .221 Fireball cartridge lived up to its name by reaching velocities of 2,700 feet/s, 823 m/s, from a 10.5, 26.7 cm, barrel. Essentially a shortened .222 Remington, the compact .221 Fireball delivered accuracy exceeding many rifles, out to ranges unheard of for other handguns. Even bigger than the XP100, the 1967 introduction of the Thompson Center Arms Contender pistol changed handgun sports forever. The Contender was a break-open design that allowed barrels to be changed by the shooter in minutes. Available in calibers from .22 long rifle up to .45 to 70, and in barrel lengths of 8, 10, and 14 inches, 20, 25, and 35.5 centimeters, the Contender could, in the right hands, handle any type of game, and delivered rifle-like accuracy to match the XP100. Many other manufacturers make single-shot pistols, most based on the bolt-action rifle, with barrels generally ranging from 10 to 15 inches, 25 to 38 centimeters. Single shots dominate handgun metallic silhouette shooting, and single shots are the most common handguns used for hunting. Single-shot pistols have sometimes found popularity among insurgents, resistance fighters, and street gangs. The mass-produced, low-cost Liberator pistol of World War II, which was manufactured and distributed by U.S. forces to Allied resistance forces and guerrilla fighters as an assassination pistol, is the most common example of a mass-produced single-shot pistol. More than 1 million units were produced and distributed freely, and many remain in private hands. A few varieties of zip guns could also be considered single-shot pistols. In recent years, these improvised firearms have become more common in the hands of criminals and insurgents, especially when manufactured firearms are difficult to acquire. Rifles. Ruger. In 1966, Sturm, Ruger introduced their first true rifle, Ruger No. 1, which uses a falling block action and is available in a wide selection of calibers from .22 Hornet to .458 Winchester Magnum. The No. 1 has always been sought after by shooters who appreciate the compact size of a single-shot rifle, and the falling block action cuts about 4 inches off the length of the rifle for a given barrel length. From 1972 to 1987, Ruger also made a less expensive version of the No. 1, the No. 3. The No. 3, which sold for about half the price of a No. 1, used a simplified, non-locking lever for the falling block action, and came with an uncheckered stock. Browning. In 1985, Browning reintroduced the famous Winchester Model 1885 single-shot rifles in popular calibers, but under the Browning name. Although the Winchester single-shot gained fame under the Winchester brand name, it was John Moses Browning that designed the rifle, selling the rights to Winchester in the early 1880s. The Browning single-shot rifle was in production from 1985 to 2001. Cooper. The majority of rifles made by Cooper are single-shot bolt-action rifles. Many of their rifles are specially crafted to suit long-range varmint hunting, where the accuracy of the single-shot action is helpful. Remington. Remington has once again made their No. 1 rolling block rifles available through their custom shop. New England Firearms, H&R. One of the most common single-action rifles would be the New England Firearms inexpensive break-open rifles, which are built on their 12-gauge break-open shotgun actions. The rifles, however, are made on a heat-treated steel action, and the shotgun actions are not heat-treated. Any rifle frame may accept rifle or shotgun barrels. The shotgun frames, however, are only safe for shotgun barrels. These were originally built by Harrington and Richardson starting in 1871. H&R was later acquired by Neff, and both are now part of the Marlin Firearms family. Rifles are sold both under the Neff and the H&R names. These rifles are quite accurate, and often less than half the price of a bolt-action rifle in the same caliber. Winchester. In 2005, Winchester remarketed their legendary Model 1885 single-shot rifle, under their limited series category. The modern calibers of .17 was offered in a low-wall design, and the .243 and .3006 were of the high-wall type. The most faithful of the reproductions are the traditional Hunter Limited Series Model 1885 single shots, as they have the original style steel crescent butt plates, and folding steel tang rear sights, with full-length octagon barrels. The traditional Hunters are chambered in the 19th century calibers of .45 to 90 BPCR, .45 to 70, .405, and .38 to 55. Test firing of some of these Winchesters showed that they are high quality in construction. Using the latest technology and modern steel, they are stronger and safer than their 19th century predecessors, and accuracy from their factory, non-custom, barrels were exceptionally good, especially at 200 yards. Sharps. Sharps rifles were a staple of the buffalo hunters in the late 19th century. Recently they have had a resurgence in popularity for hunting large game as well as historical firearms events and black powder cartridge, BPCR, competitions. Much of the current popularity is due to the film Quigley Down Under that featured a Sharps Model 1874 rifle. The popularity of cowboy action shooting has also affected the availability of single-shot rifles, with many replicas of the old black powder rifles, particularly the Sharps, now being available. Barrett M99. The Barrett M99 is a single-shot, bolt-action, bullpup sniper rifle. It is chambered in .50 BMG, and .416 Barrett round that has 0.5 MOA accuracy at ranges that far exceed 1 mile. Denel NTW-20. The Denel NTW-20 is a bolt-action, anti-materiel, or large-caliber sniper rifle. With a buffered slide in the receiver, that the barrel can recoil inside the frame, allowing for large rounds to be fired with relative ease by the user. It is chambered for 20 x 82 mm Mauser, 14.5 x 114 mm, and 20 x 110 mm Hispano-Suiza round. Specifically, it is only a single shot when chambered to the 20 mm Hispano-Suiza round, while the remaining chamberings feed from 3-round magazines. Steyr. The original version of Steyr HS.50 is a single-shot bolt-action sniper rifle. It is chambered in .50 BMG, or the .460 Steyr round in California, and can reach ranges from 1,500 to 2,500 meters.
Please subscribe and thanks for watching.